Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So if you remember last year, President Joe Biden delivered on his promise to forgive student loans, and he forgave up to $20,000 worth of student loans for select people with these loans. Now, he did not do this actually the legal way, which would be through Congress passing a bill through the House and the Senate and then getting to his desk to be signed into law. Instead, he went ahead and just did it through an executive order, which later on, this year in 2023 in July, was struck down by the Supreme Court because this would be something that would have to be passed through Congress, not something that a president can just go out and do by forgiving up to $20,000 worth of student loans. And student loans has been a huge issue in this country, just like any other debt, credit card debt, everything is soaring, especially over the past few months with the rates going up and people paying higher interest on credit cards and things like that. But student loans has definitely been a crushing issue. Now, when you think of student loans, generally most Americans are going to think of those younger age groups, perhaps people in their 20s, maybe even the 30s and 40s. But actually, less than 5% of Social Security beneficiaries also have student loan debt, and their student loan debt is definitely not any type of small amount. It's definitely quite significant. Now, unfortunately, aside from having to make payments towards those student loans coming out of their Social Security check every single month, which really isn't enough as is, not only that, but if they're not making these payments, they can actually be garnished. Their Social Security checks can be garnished by the federal government to pay off their student loan. Just imagine that. Now, thankfully, there is a law in place right now where you have to be able to receive at least $750 in Social Security benefits before anything can be garnished. So if you only make $750 or less, none of your Social Security benefit can be garnished to pay off your loans. But if, let's say, for instance, you're only receiving $1,000 per month from Social Security, $250 of that could be garnished to go towards your student loan. So then you're only receiving $750 instead of the full $1,000. Now, $1,000 certainly is enough, but if they're going to garnish $250 of, that's 25% of your $1,000 check, that's obviously going to put a lot of Americans in jeopardy. And actually, even though, like I mentioned just a moment ago, that less than 5% of Social Security beneficiaries have student loan debt, that number is expected to rise in the future. And I would also not only expect that percentage to rise in the future, but probably the amount of debt that is carried, I would expect to rise as well, because right now the cost of going to college is getting more expensive every single year, and it's questionable whether or not it's actually worth it to go to college unless you're going for maybe a few select things, but we'll definitely be getting into that later. Now, last week there was actually a bill introduced in both the House and the Senate that would put some protections in place for Social Security beneficiaries from having their checks garnished. So according to CNBC, the Protections of Social Security Benefits Restoration Act was introduced in the House by Representatives John Larson and Raul Grijalva, and in the Senate by Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon. Now, you can see here this bill was introduced in the House by John Larson. He's also the person who introduced the Social Security 2100 Act, which would increase benefits across the board by 2% for everyone, and would also increase the special minimum benefit up above 25% above the federal poverty line, which would be around a $485 increase. So Larson is one person in the House who is trying to do a lot of things for Social Security beneficiaries, and in this bill, he's also leading this bill as well. So John Larson said, Social Security is an earned benefit Americans have paid into their entire working lives, and garnishing these already modest benefits to recover student loan debt hurts their ability to retire with dignity. And he's absolutely right there. The average check this year is right around $1,800. And if we're going to garnish even more money of that from their paycheck, which $1,800 is going to be very hard to get by to pay everything, especially with inflation that's really been taking off over the past couple of years, it's going to be very difficult for them to get by if they're going to be garnishing those checks. The article goes on to say that the reduction in annual Social Security benefits from such garnishments can be about $2,500 on average, The Center for Retirement Research at Boston College has estimated, based on 2019 data, that represents about 4 to 6% of household income, which may instead be used to cover other expenses, according to the Center for Retirement Research. The article goes on to say that the number of Social Security beneficiaries who had a portion of their Social Security benefits taken by the government for student loan repayments increased by more than 5 times between 2002 and 2016. According to a 2016 Government Accountability Office report, at least 114,000 beneficiaries saw their Social Security checks garnished when they fell behind on student loan repayments, according to the research. Quote, the amount of student debt held by older adults has gone up dramatically in the past 15 years or so, said Kate Lang, Director of Federal Income Security at Justice and Aging, an organization devoted to fighting senior poverty. Now, this is obviously a huge problem, and like I mentioned just a moment ago, I really only expect this to worsen in the future, where future retirees, future people receiving benefits are going to have even more of their checks garnished. The amount of student debt held by people right now is just rising dramatically. It's the cost of going to college is just getting more expensive every single year. It's getting out of hand. And like I mentioned just a moment ago, it's questionable whether or not it's even worth it going to college. I mean, Americans are sort of fed this false lie. Like, if you go to college and you graduate college and you get a bachelor's degree, you're going to be guaranteed a great paying job where you're not only going to be able to pay off your debt, but you're also going to be able to generate wealth for your family for years to come. But what ends up happening for a lot of people is they go to college and maybe they drop out after a few years when they find out it's not for them, but then they're stuck with all the student loan debt, and then they don't even have their degree. Or let's say they do, graduate college. It ends up being with a degree that's really not worth anything when they're told as like an 18-year-old, like, go to college, get a degree in anything, you're going to be fine. But if they end up getting a degree in something that's pretty much worthless, they might end up with a job that they could have gotten without going to college. So it's, unless you're picking, going to college and getting a degree in an area like in a few select areas where it's really going to be worth it, it's questionable whether or not it's actually going to be worth it for you to go to college. Now, some new protections have been put in place under President Joe Biden that's going to delay the garnishment of these Social Security checks at least for another year or so. So, according to CNBC, however, new protections put in place under President Joe Biden as payments restart will delay any garnishments from happening. The earliest I can see someone getting their Social Security garnished would be late fall of 2024, said Betsy Mayotte, president and founder of the Institute of Student Loan Advisors, a provider of student loan advice and dispute resolution. So hopefully, things do get better in the future, but it's not so good of news there. Now, in some other bad news today, of course, it does look like the government is going to be shutting down, as the House and Senate are nowhere near an agreement for government funding for fiscal year 2024. So it does look like we are going to have a government shutdown. This would not be the first time this ended up happening. So we're going to be covering whether or not payments for Social Security could potentially be garnished and how a government shutdown could potentially harm you. So according to Merca, government shutdown 2023, how can a government shutdown affect your Social Security benefits? So the Senate and Congress have until September 30th to pass a federal budget, and if they are unable to do so, it could trigger a U.S. government shutdown, meaning that non-essential government agencies stop their work. That is a scary sounding situation, leaving many people to wonder what it means for their day-to-day lives and their personal finances. So they say that it's important to note that this will not affect Social Security payments, nor should it impact Medicare benefits or the U.S. Postal Service, meaning that your day-to-day should function as usual in this area, likewise with airport travel, customs and borders, and ports. They go on to say that, however, the shutdown will impact new applications for Social Security cards, which will not be accepted or issued during a government shutdown. And on a typical day, approximately 60,000 Americans apply for Social Security cards, which they may need to be able to start a job, take out a loan, open a bank account, or conduct other financial transactions, and during a shutdown, no Social Security cards are issued. There will also be further impact to non-essential federal employees who will be furloughed, while government food benefits could be delayed and national parks might reject visitors. So thankfully, payments for Social Security will continue to go out if we do have a government shutdown, so we don't have to worry about those payments being delayed or not going out in October. They definitely will. However, in other areas, there will definitely be an impact as far as a government shutdown goes. But we'll just have to wait and see how quickly they can get that resolved. It's definitely a messy situation with the House and Senate pretty far apart as far as government funding goes. But that's all we have for today's video. I certainly hope that you enjoyed and found value out of it. If you did, again, I would greatly appreciate if you could give this video a like. Consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already. And I will see you in the next video.